Right, here we are again. It's been a manic few days. Cortina left us on Saturday after all hands on deck Friday to get it completed. The owner took it out on Sunday for a pretty substantial drive and was really happy. A few little post shakedown things to tweak, which is no great surprise, and to be honest, the biggest one was that the diff was a bit noisy, which we knew anyway. So I thought we'd start this one up in the trim department. So Dean is working away on some of the trim panels for the Mercedes W111 Kaiser II, as we've called it. And we're basically doing a two-tone leather upholstery on these trim panels which sit inside the boot. The whole boot is basically going to have like a sort of trim panel that runs all the way down one side across the bulkhead at the front of the boot and down the other side. And we're doing basically a two-tone leather, which we've also extended into the seats. Dean's just done a little trial here of how we were going to achieve the join between the two, because we were very worried about actually doing a stitched joint on here because of the radius of the curves it goes round and the sort of problems with accurately positioning it all. We were worried that wasn't going to be a very good way of doing it. So what we've done is we're putting a high density foam onto these trim panels that's what, 5mm thick, is it, Dean? Yeah, 5mm thick. And what we do is we then leather over it. We pattern up and cut the leather, which is what Dean's just patterning now, and then literally cut it 5mm longer than where the line is, and then literally tuck the two leathers into the groove that we've created, you know, in between where the different colours of leather are going to go. So you get this kind of joint between the two colours, but without the dangers of a stitched joint leaving creases on the corners. So that's hopefully going to work out well. There's a panel, one side's got a subwoofer in it, this side here. The other side's got a removable panel, which basically mimics the shape of the subwoofer grille. And magnets in place, and this is actually a plate that needs blasting, but this is a plate that goes on the back that the magnets are attached to, so this will kind of finish the inside of that hole. So that's all looking pretty smart. There's a few other little details, like this is a guide we've made. There's going to be a little detail in the leather on the bulkhead, the central panel in the boot, with a badge on it that's got the car's name laser etched into it. And this is the shape that the leather's going to take. But because it's quite a precise shape, we've just literally plasma cut this piece so we can scalpel around the edge of it to basically, as a template, to get the cut nice and neat. So that's just one little detail. Right, let's fall down the stairs. I'll pause briefly while we're in here, actually, just show you the front seats for the same car. So if you glance perhaps this way, this is the seat base, and you can see that two-tone leather again on there. The piping we've also made, that's literally a strip of the same leather wrapped around a small piece of plastic tube to create the piping. And all of the chrome components were stripped down on these seats and individually re-chromed, and are just in the process of being reassembled, so they'll be back together and ready to go in the car shortly. So, step this way. Oh, that always happens. The floor, I think there's too much flex in the floor, and I stand near the door, the wedge drops out. Right, let's see what's going on in here. So, a couple of things have just come back to here today. You have to excuse the state of the bench, but this is the cylinder head for Utah, the Mk2 Jag project. So it's a Toyota 2JZ head. And if you watch the previous episodes, probably in the Uncut episodes we mentioned it actually, there was a little bit of damage in one of the chambers where, because it was a used engine, something had obviously dropped into one of the cylinders at some stage and had been kind of mashed into the top of the chamber there. So we did a repair, which there's been basically 3 stages to it. First stage was we had the damaged area laser welded. The second stage was we then had this taken to our kind of resident machinist, who machined back the weld to a flat surface just in the actual combustion chamber. And then the third step is this went over to our usual engine machinist to skim it and also recut all the valve seats, and that's looking really good now. So we're now happy that pending a bit of a clean up is now going to be ready to start being reassembled. So that's really good. Let's have a bit of a whoa. What's this? Somebody's pointing at me and saying prop shaft, I think, is the thing that's being pointed at. This is the prop shaft for Kaiser II, actually, which is just over here. So we've been just waiting for that to be made up. That joins the Jag rear axle, which to those watching this for the first time might seem like I'm using the wrong word, but it's got Jag X300 XJ subframes, both ends in that car. So it makes up the Jag rear axle to the GM transmission. So it's got a Chevy 4L65E auto box, which is just a nice go-to reliable auto box that we use on these. So that's that. Have a little wander over here. What I thought I would do is mention one of the cars that often gets asked about. People always say, what's this Skyline in the corner of the workshop? Well, it's not actually a Skyline. I shall show you what this is, and it's sort of on hold at the minute, but hoping to get back on with this pretty soon, just because it's such a sort of left field project, something really unusual, which is obviously what we enjoy doing. It's actually a Nissan Sunny. It's a Sunny Zx Coupe, and the reason you might think it's not a Sunny, it's a Skyline, is because we've actually remade most of the bodywork on it. Everything from this swage line here down is basically handmade bodywork on it. The wheels are obviously not the final wheels. We're going to get some custom-made wheels done for it. But the owner of this car, along with ourselves, basically hatched this plan to come up with a really kind of edgy, angular, 80s kind of wide-bodied look, based around the kind of original Sunny platform. And it's a car he absolutely loves. You know, it's almost a strange one. You know, you see these guys like this who can afford all sorts of amazing cars, but he just loves Nissan Sunnys. You know, he's always had Sunny coupes for years. It's always been his dream for for years and years now to kind of realise this dream of this modified Sunny. So yeah, bit by bit we're making that dream happen. There's obviously, we've got just a mock-up light in here at the minute. That's going to be replaced with a different, slightly more attractive looking light. And then there'll be a smoked acrylic cover which basically fills this gap from here to here, runs all the way across. That'll be in 3 pieces, and the central section folds down. That'll be the bit the number plate's in, but that folds down to access the fuel filler that's going to be in the centre there. And then at the bottom here there'll be a transverse silencer with like a perforated heat shield around it, which you can see through the back, but actually exits in the sides here and over the other side. And we've designed and made some little billet bezels that sit in there around those. And the front end's similar, you know, that we've widened out the wings from, again, that swage line all the way down. Just going to uncover this. The whole sill as well, that's all steel work. And they were made as complete panels, so the quarter was actually cut out along that line. We modelled kind of the shape we wanted, made it as a single piece steel panel, and then literally grafted it in as a whole panel. And then it's running a CA18, which the naturally aspirated CA18 is actually what these had originally, but we've done a turbo conversion on the original engine to essentially make it a CA18 DET, which is what you'd get in a 200SX, an early 200SX. So yeah, it was an unusual project. And something really cool. I think I like it just because it is such an odd choice almost. So that's what that is. It's not a Skyline, it's a Sunny. One last thing actually before we move on. This is the sort of mindset the guy has. He wants everything made of metal on the car. So the spoiler, and there are some side pieces to this too, this is basically a replica of, I think it was a Nismo spoiler, or certainly a Nissan Motorsport spoiler, which you could buy, and it was a rubber spoiler, and he had one as a pattern. But he didn't want a rubber spoiler, he wanted it to be metal. So we've actually handmade this in aluminium. So this whole spoiler is actually a hollow fabricated aluminium piece. And there must be, I don't know, we must have put probably close to, I don't know, maybe not 100 hours, but certainly more than a week. I'd say there was 40 or 50 hours in just making that spoiler. So that's that. The Manta we touched on last week, that's just about ready to go now. We're going to make the floor mats for it, and literally that's the last thing, so that will be gone by the time we talk again. Follow me through this way. You might have noticed possibly that I'm looking even more dishevelled than normal, and that's because I've spent all morning, and will probably spend all the afternoon, sculpting filler basically and foam. So the reason I've been doing that is we've been doing some work on the Morris. So I think the last time we were just looking at shaping up that offside front wing. And we basically made a steel kind of rough mock-up of the wing shape we wanted, so that we could get the wheel right up in the arch at full bump and steer it each way and basically check all the wheel clearance. But in terms of actually setting the final shape of the arches, we wanted to mock it all up in foam first, basically, so we could then take profiles from the arches before we make the final ones. Now, we can't do the foam model and check the wheel clearance, because by the time you've got all that foam in there, you can't any longer get the wheel up into the arch. So it's kind of a twofold process the way we're going about this one, of doing the steel mock-up so we can check the wheel clearance and then shaping the look we want cosmetically. So that's what I've been doing this morning, basically, and this is literally just insulation board. We've just stuck it on with expanding foam, and we did that yesterday, so it was gone hard by this morning, and then I've literally just spent the whole morning roughly sculpting the shapes, and I guess I might be 50% through, I don't know. I'm certainly approaching that, although you do tend to find with this sort of sculpting work that you feel like you've got 90% there in a matter of hours, and then it takes you days to get through the last 10%. But I'm really happy with how it's looking, so you know, I'm going to carry on a bit of more filler work on the front. I haven't finished the very front of that wing because we need to mock up the very front part of the car where the sort of air dam comes around. This rear wing is getting there. I need to do a few more skims of fill around here. But yeah, it's very much just a modelling stage, so we'll model this until we're happy with the shape of it, and then once we're happy with it, we'll take profiles off it and make a book, and then we'll hammer form a steel panel the same shape. So I mean, the thing we've been aiming for with it is to try and make it not look radically modified. So although we're widening it by a substantial amount, I think we probably widened it by 70 mil, something like that. It doesn't want to shout. It's that it's a widened Morris Minor. We want it to look almost like, if you didn't know what a Morris looked like, you'd think it always looked like this. So that's that. And the last thing I'm going to do is, if you follow us through here, we're going to go to a location, a lesser spotted location. Mind the step, Jamie. This is the paint mixing room. Yeah, of course it's Jamie, that's your name. And we come through here, and we have just done epoxy primer on Utah, the Mk2 Jag project. So we've been kind of battling through that, or seemingly never-ending sanding stage. We got everything in like the final polyester coat probably a week ago. I think when the last Uncut, we were just block sanding the polyester. Finished that yesterday, got it in here to be epoxy primed. So the next step now we've basically got a waterproof coating on everything. Will be to wet sand this prior to the final paint. And the sort of reasoning there is that you don't really want to be wet sanding any material that's porous, because it holds water, it holds moisture against the surface of the metal. So all of the build material we've done so far, we've sanded dry because it was all porous material. Now we've sealed it in with a non-porous coating, we can wet sand this, and it's really necessary to do that because we take this down to 800 grit before we put the final paint on. And at 800 grit, if you try and sand dry, you will always get some degree of clogging of the paper, and then those little clogs leave little score marks in the finish. So you need to be able to wet sand it, but obviously to wet sand it, you want it to be completely sealed in, so you're not risking getting moisture against the metal anywhere. So that's that. That's this week's update, and we'll let you know how we're getting on next week. See you later.